So this is our once monthly interview series where we speak with a writer, musician, artist, creative. And tonight we have a special treat. We are being joined by Xander, who is the founder and executive director of Jaded Phoenix Studios. Jaded Phoenix Studios is a multimedia indie development company. Xander joins us to discuss their ongoing D&D games and streams, as well as an exciting game development project and a new stream that's going to be coming soon for everyone. So good evening, Xander. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. Excited for tonight. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And I'm excited for tonight as well. It's going to be a great interview, I think. Um, so thanks for taking the time to join us and for being a part of this interview tonight. We had a quick chat earlier, and like you said, I'm very excited for the interview. I think it's going to be great, something a little different from what we've normally seen in the past. So to get started, like I said, you are the founder and executive director of Jaded Phoenix Studios. Can you tell us a little bit about Jaded Phoenix Studios?
So JPS is a small outfit. We focus on telling stories about genuine emotion and experiences through a variety of different mediums, genres, lenses. I founded the company back in 2010 after some character differences led to the dissolution of an indie dev team I'd been recruited to about a year before. Um, we have a film podcast, a video series in early pre-development, a few other video projects in the works and on YouTube, as well as our tabletop RPG explorations via the Jaded Phoenix Adventurers Guild, and an actual video game RPG, Cry of the Dead Dation, which is currently in active development.
That's fantastic. So it is. There's a lot that Jaded Phoenix Studios is doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So when you
We're a bunch
say,
of busy bees.
so when you say indie development, it really is indie development. Yes, there is. We are going to put in some links as we can. The I'll put in a link to the Jaded Phoenix Studio, and if you have any that you want to put in as well, Xander, you can. And then we're also going to link to Xander's page because that's a very good uh, continuation onto this. So it says you're also, apart from doing all of that you do with Jaded Phoenix Studios, you're also a streamer here on Twitch and you host a D&D stream.
Yes.
So we all know Dungeons and Dragons D&D is a great game. It's a creative outlet because there's a lot of mobility and movement within each game that you play. That makes it accessible to a lot of different people. But for those of us who aren't really up to speed on Dungeons and Dragons, can you give us a quick rundown on? I know it's a tough thing to say for such an expansive game, but can you give us a quick rundown on Dungeons and Dragons and how it's played?
Yeah, so at its essence, D&D is a fun way to become a hero and go on adventures with friends within, kind of the safety of your, comfort bubble. So whether that's your home, your hometown, or, something, it's a really nice, safe way to just connect with people. There's a lot of role play involved to build story together, but interactions with NPCs and combat are most often determined by dice rolls and math resulting from those rolls.
So it's not something that you all have to be sat around the same table playing. You can do it remotely then.
Right, yeah. So three of our most common players for JPEG are actually in Britain. Um, and we have people, just kind of from all over joining in with us.
That's really cool. So as we can see, and as I was saying before, is that yes, we are talking about Dungeons and Dragons and game development and your studio and a few other things. However, there is a lot of character development and world building and writing that goes into a D&D game, just like we do in normal writing or writing, say, not normal writing, but writing for novels and short stories and other things like that.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get more into that, the creative aspect of it. Um, but you do have a D&D stream. So can you tell us a bit about that? How does that work? What is it?
Yeah, so with the stream, it happens about once a week. Um, and essentially with that, we are Um, Trying to do it consistently. There's a little bit more flexibility right now, and experimentation with scheduling because I just moved cross country and am kind of transitory looking for my own place up here. But basically, the way that we do everything is everyone jumps into my Discord server and Roll20, which is a great virtual tabletop. Um, and we build our characters, ahead of time, jump in there, and we're all telling a story. But most of the players, um, as well as the uh, DM are generally paying attention to the chat, and so being able to communicate with each other as well as the viewers, and just kind of really build our adventure together.
That's really cool. So, what day of the week do you stream that?
So this coming week, June 2nd, we are trying out Wednesdays. We had been doing Tuesdays since we started, but due to just some differences in the household I'm currently staying in, we're giving Wednesdays a try. So this next session will be June 2nd from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Excellent. So we'll do a reminder of that again at the end for those of you who want to check out. So when you do these games, you say you do them weekly. Is it always the same? Oh,
Oh,
Nightbot just gave you a block and you should
yeah.
not have. So let's give Nightbot a little bit of a
Here, I
thing here.
will.
Nightbot Smite, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So we are I'm going to copy this and put the links back in. Sorry for the interruption here, chat. I just want to make sure that we've got what we're looking for. And you can all have access to the information that we all need. Oh, there we go. Casey did that. Thank you very much, Casey. Yeah, if you can take care, I forgot. Casey, if you can take care of Nightbot, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Casey.
Yes, Casey is one of the fantastic moderators of this channel. So yeah, you're saying that you do this weekly. Is this typically, is it always the same DM that you're working with, or do you have other DMs that you use?
So we do have a primary DM who I see is actually in the chat and watching us right now. Debatably Daryl there. Um, but we would like to have guest DMs and GMs because while D&D is what we're most familiar with, and so it's the only thing we've played so far, we do want to try some other systems as well. We just need to find, GMs who want to join with us. But I am also going to be putting on the DM or GM hat from time to time. My first session to run was actually last night. Um, so the difference between DM and GM is that DM stands for Dungeon Master and has actually been um, trademarked by Wizards of the Coast. So it can only be used for D&D games. But GM is Game Master, and that can be used for any game.
I did not know that. That's a great clarification. Um, so, but they don't have any issue with you using, say, Dungeon Master in an interview setting like this or something, because you're talking about D&D, right?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
because we're talking about D&D, it's perfectly fine. Yeah.
So, what would someone, what credentials would someone need to be a Dungeon Master?
So I mean, basically, you just need to have a story that you want to run and know the rules and be able to keep a group of people on track. Um, and I mean, your main goal as DM or GM should be to um, help your players have fun and work toward a common goal. Um, but uh, yeah, it's there aren't really any major credentials. If you're going to be on my stream, then there'd be, a bit of a conversation just as to um, what kind of story you're wanting to tell, and if you've ever run a game before. If you haven't, then we'd want to do like an off-stream test run essentially. Um, but yeah, like if you're a storyteller, and you want to have fun with people, and you're good at reading rules and learning systems, then there's nothing stopping you.
There you go. Then we can uh, writing. We're actually going to get to that question very soon. So everyone that's out there, flood the inbox of Xander with requests and story ideas to BDM. Give debatably Daryl a day off from DM, and that sounds absolutely fantastic. So when you right now when you are doing the games, are they campaigns that you're doing, which are I know the longer Dungeons and Dragons games, or are they more kind of shorter adventures that you're doing right now?
So right now we are doing shorter adventures. We are focused on um, getting everyone kind of accustomed to each other, figuring out what we are, how other players kind of play, and especially getting people used to the role play aspect of it. That's often the more difficult part for people to really kind of get into the groove of. Um, but we also, most of our players had never played a session of any tabletop RPG before the first game they did with us, which has been super exciting.
That's fantastic. That's great to be able to break someone into a new world and see them at they really first start, and then what they burgeon into as they grow and gain experience and confidence and things like that. That
Oh
must be
yeah,
exciting. So,
super, super exciting.
is there a plan to create longer campaigns down the road, or is this? And actually, and a part of that as well is just if I'm like, writer was just asking in the chat, if I'm sitting in the audience and you're during one of your streams and I'm watching this, like you said, you've got people that have never played before, and there are just short streams right now. If I'm sitting in the audience watching everything play out, am I able to jump in and play a game, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't take same day signups, but we do post sign up sheets for upcoming sessions in the Discord as well as on the company Twitter. And so, if you're watching and you want to join, definitely, you can hop in to my Discord and join, get the JPEG role, and just take a look at sessions that we have coming up. Um, and we're super thrilled whenever we have new people join. Um, it's fun, keeping fresh voices and fresh blood in the pool. Um, and so we definitely encourage people joining in. But for same day participation, we have you know chat communication. Players will sometimes take suggestions from the audience, as well as some buffs and debuffs that you can apply via like bit donations and subscriptions and things like that.
Well, that's really cool. I want to chat about a little bit more about that in a moment. So, is there a plan to create longer campaigns? And if you do, like once, yeah. Well, I guess that's the first question: is there a plan to create longer campaigns?
Yes. So Daryl is wanting to run a kind of pre-made campaign. that I think he's been wanting to run for quite a while. And then I am converting an old um, novel idea of mine uh, into a campaign. So I may do some streams that are just kind of world building for that coming up. But yeah, we do plan on having some longer adventures that will take place over a series of sessions rather than just one to four, which is what we've had so far.
Okay. And we actually just had a question come up. That is a campaign like a single adventure, like a film, or is it lots of smaller adventures, like a TV series that build to something?
Uh,
Oh, and we've got Daryl has made a comment on that as well. That is
yeah.
individual adventures, like a film series. So it's kind of like the uh, uh, for a Marvel reference, I guess, would be kind of like the series of the Avengers and all that leading up to the end game. There's all these little things that run up to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would really. Daryl has been playing and DMing longer than I have, but my impression of it has always been that a campaign is more like a TV series, and the individual quests and things like that or like a campaign is a season of a TV show, and each quest is an episode. And so, over the course of one series, you may have multiple seasons and therefore essentially multiple campaigns with the same characters. Um, but uh, the campaigns as a whole are a series of sessions, and each session is kind of like or each quest is kind of like an episode.
That makes sense. Now, if you've got a long campaign that you're looking at building out, so I know we were talking earlier, and you were saying once the stream is established and you kind of figure out all the details of which you want to have, then you're looking at doing these longer campaigns.
Mhm.
So once that's done, you have an ongoing long campaign. Is that going to be the end of the audience members joining, or is there still opportunities for new players to jump in and play a smaller game and kind of get their feet wet and figure out what it's all about?
So we do plan on still having the shorter adventures that new players or less frequent players can join because we don't really ever want to cancel that part of it. And so we've talked about a couple of different ways to do that, depending on how popularity goes and whether or not we're able to find, um, you know, a wealth, I guess, of DMs and GMs. It'll be a about every other week will be the main campaign. And then that's my cat. Hello, Willow. Uh, um, and then we'll have one shots or short adventures on the off weeks. Um, and once my campaign is ready, we've discussed expanding to two different days for the streams instead of just the one. And that would again be split where we'd have campaigns every other week and then one shots and stuff on the off weeks.
That's great. That's nice to hear how it's growing out. There's actually, as you're talking about the game master. I've got a short story I did a while ago that might create. It might be an interesting session for a game, but it would not be Dungeons and Dragons, which is more science fiction related. So that would have to be a
Okay.
game, I guess. But we can talk about that another
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
So well, I was going to ask you, do I have to be well versed to join a game, or is there space for newbies? But we've already discussed that there is definitely space, and we've discussed how people can sign up and register. But if I'm sitting in the audience again, and I want to participate, but I can't. I don't have the commitment to be able to commit to once a week or once every 2 weeks, and or I'm just too shy or just not interested in jumping in and playing a game right away. I was wondering if there's a way that I could be involved, or is it more of just sitting and watching the game play out? But you were just mentioning something about being able to chat with the players while they're playing, and using bits and donations and stuff to, from what I'm reading, kill the dungeon master. So how? So what is that? How does that work? What is that? That's a really cool concept. And for those of you who were with us before the interview started, I was saying that there were some things I was kind of jealous about because they've got some fantastic, as you're about to hear, some fantastic ways of interacting with the audience. And I'm going to have to try to figure if I can beef up my game a little bit. So, what can the audience do if they're not playing?
Absolutely. So, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, our players generally tend to be active in the chat throughout play, which is, really fun, gives us the opportunity for some table talk, which normally would interrupt gameplay. But with the chat there allows us to just kind of continue going on kind of in the background and discuss things and make little out of character jokes. But we'll also sometimes send messages in character. So like if the action within the game is focused on someone else, but we know our character would be doing something silly in the background, we'll just send that in the chat. And uh, you know, we both as players and sometimes in character will talk to the audience. And so if audience has a suggestion for, hey, you should do, this or that, then we kind of look at it, and a lot of the time we'll be like, that seems really fun, but that would definitely not be in character. But if it is in character, we will roll with that idea. Um, and so that's a really fun way to join in. But we also have the buffs and debuffs that you can do, as well as like a giveaway and a leaderboard for those buffs and debuffs. So you can give like inspiration, which gives you extra dice that you can add to certain types of rolls. You can do a blessing or a bane, which either takes away or adds to an attack or save. And you can also roll on a wild table, which, depending on the session, can kind of range from just the traditional wild magic table to last session we were doing a host club, and so I had a table I built of different things that might happen, like, previous clients coming in and being jealous of your current clients or whatever. And so a lot of it is random, but the person giving the bits or subscribing or gifting a sub gets to decide who that effect applies to. So if they're watching and they're like, you know what, I'm really annoyed by all of this week's characters, I want to give a blessing or inspiration to the bad guy. You can do that. You can totally try and screw us over. That's, you're welcome to. But you can also be like, I really like, Hannah's character this week. I want to make sure she does not die because she seems like a bit of a glass cannon. Like she has no strength. She's gonna die. Take some inspiration. Here's 100 bits. Um, so definitely ways to get involved. And we really, really love chat interaction, especially.
That's amazing. And not only is it ways to get involved, it's also ways that the audience adds depth to the story, they add depth to what's happening, and it allows a secondary way for the players to add depth to their characters, being able to crack jokes off to the side or explain what they're doing in the background while another action is happening. That's just, it's another amazing layer of depth that gets added to the whole thing. Yeah, that's the thing that I find wonderful about Twitch and about doing all this stuff, is that we can, it does add depth. You know, it seems strange when we're younger growing up, you know, to think that I'd have people interested in sitting there watching me write something, or to have someone
Right.
interested to sit there and watch you play a game of D&D, or any game for that matter.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pretty stunning thought, and it's happening. And because it's happening, it's allowing so much more richness to be built in around these things that we're doing, which is fantastic. I know I've played D&D a long time ago in the past. I mean, a long time ago. We're probably talking about 25 years ago. And I've got friends that still play, and that was the thing that I found difficult is if you have people that flake out for whatever reason, if they can't, you know, if you've got four people playing a game and two of them can't make it to that game, it kind of shuts down the entire session for that night. So how do you deal with that if you're dealing with players from around the world all playing at the same time? Do you have like a certain number of players you need for quorum, or if one or two drop out, do you have to cancel? Like, how do you handle that difficulty?
So thankfully we've only had people have to drop out a couple of times so far. One of the times we actually had someone on retainer already. And the other time we had enough players that them having to drop out didn't really hurt things terribly much. Um, but uh, being able to be kind of flexible with that is definitely crucial, especially once we are able to start campaigns, because you don't want to, get too far in the story without, one of your characters actually being controlled by the player. Um, but uh, but yeah, it requires a bit of forethought and planning for things to possibly fall through. We've had major internet issues, mean that a player just disappeared mid-sentence. That was really interesting to kind of figure out and explain within the story. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of thinking on your feet and having backup plans.
That that makes sense. That's would be a very good way of handling it. Yeah, there's it's just amazing the things that we have to take into account now. With as great as it is, and the different things we can do with technology now, you really do need to be prepared for that dark side of things when things go off the rails for us.
Absolutely.
So as I promised everyone, now there's just so people know, there is another part to this interview as well, where we're going to be talking about a really awesome video game that's coming up. But there is also going to be, just on the topic of Dungeons and Dragons, a bit more of an organic conversation. And I was talking about in the beginning about how there is character design, development, world building, and all that stuff, uh, and storytelling when it comes to playing Dungeons and Dragons. So with that, Xander, how important would you say planning is in creating each game that you play?
So, th this is actually something that is a matter of great debate within the D&D community. It's really fun to kind of watch people debate because there are some who, will spend their whole week planning, two different sessions. And then there are people who are like, oh, yeah, that's today. All right. And so I mean there are like decks now um that you can like just kind of pull a few cards from and build um build a quick story. Um and so there are some people who just go in with basically no prep. Um
So debatably, that could be someone like Daryl.
Yeah, that debatably that could be someone like Daryl. Like, no one is naming names, except for Daryl. He seems to be naming names a bit. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a bit of a matter of debate. For my session last night, um, I was supposed to have four players, four characters, but one of them ended up getting a horrible migraine and having to drop out, as we had discussed. Sometimes that happens. And so we went in with three, but I had prepared eight NPCs, two for each character, um, and was, marginally prepared for combat between the NPCs to possibly happen, even though I had told everyone that there was going to be no combat. And I just kind of went in with like, an index card's worth of information about each character. A couple of them I have had just kind of sitting in the background as character ideas that I didn't really know where to throw in until the players started telling me about their characters. Um, but, I would say I went in with fairly minimal prep, um, especially compared to, Daryl, who does a really great job spending hours and hours putting things together, maps and things like that. Whereas I was like, nah, we're not dealing with maps today. This is all theater of the mind. We're gonna talk. We're gonna describe where we're going, but this is about role play. And so it all depends on what you're going into. My preparation style would be very different for, a campaign session than it is for that one. So it just kind of depends on the tone of what you're doing.
That yeah, that makes sense. So I guess this is kind of like people talk about in writing the idea of being a plotter or being a pantser, where if you plot and design everything, or if you just fly by the seat of your pants for everything that you're doing. And thinking about it, I guess D&D is kind of a perfect marriage of the two of them because you have to have a well thought out and planned out kind of overall overarching story of what's going to happen, where the character is going to be brought to in the end. So you've got that story that needs to be developed and thought out and planned out. But then you've got the DM or GM and all of the players really pantsing it. They're reacting to what is happening in real time, and that is what's developing and building their characters and giving them ideas as to how to grow their characters as they go along.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely would say that. And I write as well, and I've always struggled with, getting like a short story written because when it comes to that kind of storytelling, I'm not a pantser. I'm a plotter. Like I get teased by some of my friends because they're like, I will never write original fiction with you unless you have finished the world building and are just giving me a world to jump into because you're too in depth. There's too much there. But with, like that session last night, I was like, yeah, no, I'll spend like maybe a couple of hours getting my characters ready and going over like, you know, what might their characters kind of go for. Um, and it's a very different kind of storytelling, but you need a bit of both
Yeah,
for sure.
the creativity behind it is just fascinating. So if you're doing
Hmm.
a story that has, five characters, do are people able to come in and choose whatever characters they want? Or is it, we know that the story's been written and the story was written with these five characters, and one's a mage, one's a druid, one's a barbarian, one is a gnome, and one is something else. Does that kind of dictate, like, okay, you people that are playing, you have to be one of these characters, choose? Or can you just say, this is the storyline, who do you want to be? And you substitute the characters that they want.
So there are certainly DMs and GMs out there who will say, all right, so these are the only kinds of characters you can play, just pick one. They are generally considered the worst kind of person to sit at a table with. Um, because, it's just it if you're gonna be that stringent about your rules for telling a story, then maybe you should just tell the story on your own. Um, so generally, there may be, well, in this kind of setting, this race or this class wouldn't make much sense. But a good DM is gonna kind of work with you. Yeah, we did play a game with pre-made characters, sort of. We told people, this is it was called Murder on the Eberron Express. So it's based on Murder on the Orient Express. And so there were character archetypes, but you still got to do a lot of your character building. You were told, all right, so this is your class and your level and your race, but you can come up with the rest. And that was actually really fun. But again, that was, a one shot, not a full campaign. And that makes a pretty big difference too.
So that kind of plays out as almost like those old choose your own adventure books where you've got your own character that you can choose what they do, but you've got a limited number of actions. Like it has to be kind of within certain parameters for
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
So I can see how that takes some of the creativity out of it. But I can see also for some people how that might be enjoyable if it's something that they don't like. Some One of the things I like to say is from constraints come possibilities. So there's some people that don't
Yeah,
like just wide open spaces. They've got the constraints make them play a little bit better.
absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, so the interview or the so when you do, if you've got a story that's written out then and you've got people able to pull in whatever characters they want, does that then, is it always kind of the same? The story is going to start and flow through the way it was planned and it's going to finish the way it was planned? Or is it ever that the plot, like the storyline that was originally written, just goes completely off the rails and becomes something totally different and unexpected?
So the only constant in D&D is that the party is going to mess every single one of your plans up. Um, Often in absolutely fantastic and wonderful, impressive ways. And sometimes it's going to be, why are you so focused on this cat? There, there's an entire volcano over here that's about to blow up. Why are you trying to find a home for this cat? Or whatever. Like and sometimes your party just wants to be a bunch of murder hobos who go around and they're like, oh, that that NPC looked at me weird. No, they didn't. Yeah, they did. I killed them now, you know. And so it's you got to be ready for chaos. You got to have a lot of um just kind of you know not even backup plans, but just be ready for the players to throw anything at you. um yeah, so one of our things was called Wild Sheep Chase, and we were supposed to eradicate this group of wolves that had been terrorizing a town, and we ended up instead they were like sentient wolves who could talk. And we ended up convincing um, the townspeople to uh, team up with the wolves and become, a team, and we got to keep a sheep. Oh, that was Wolves of Welton. Which one was the? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry.
A lot of wolf
They
sheep stories
see
going on.
we had too many sheep like back to back. But yes, too many wolves, too many sheep. Yes. We were just vibing. We got one of the bad guys to just join us because we were just vibing. And the Wheel of Wild Magic was used on my character, and so I was floating in the air, and having to be dragged around by Mama B's character, like a balloon. So yeah, it was a fun session. It gets crazy, and adding in, the audience interactivity just makes it even less predictable. Um, but yeah, definitely, if you go in expecting everything to go completely according to plan, you're gonna be disappointed. Because unless you tell everyone, okay, guys, this is the story that we're telling, this is how it needs to end, and everyone is on board with that, it's just not gonna happen. Because, people people's brains work differently from yours, and so therefore they may look at a situation and go, "Oh yeah, obviously I need to investigate this." And you're going, "What? No, I gave you all the information. Just go do the quest. What are you talking about?"
So it's like the players that play a video game and start and go straight through and finish, and then there's others that go and do every single side quest that they can as they go off and they
Absolutely.
just get distracted by chasing cats all the time.
Yes.
Has there ever been, and you don't need to name names, has there ever been a game where after you've gone through a campaign, after you've gone through a series, you've looked at one of the players and kind of been like, I am a little bit concerned about your mental health now. Like, you went off on way too many murder missions.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, it so many times. And so my first ever D&D game, which was actually 4 years ago, earlier this week, was we're in the middle of playing, and like the first couple of sessions go pretty well. We're like, we're getting a few weird vibes from the DM, but for the most part it's going pretty well. And then something happened in the third or fourth session that just made all of us players look at each other and go, "There's something not right with this guy. What in the world is going on?" And we ended up not finishing that campaign
Wow.
because it just became very clear that we had different priorities and ethics. But yeah, sometimes you find out a lot about people from the way that they play the game. Um, and like, even I have a chaotic evil character, and like even with that character, like we had a heart-wrenching moment that had people like on the verge of tears, with just some things that happened with him. And so it's kind of like, you know there are definitely times that you're like, you're not okay, and we might need to talk about that. And then there are some times that you're like, you're not okay, and we're never talking again. And that was the case with my first D&D DM.
That makes
But
sense.
yeah. But there's actually a really fun trend on TikTok right now where they talk about what your favorite D&D class means about you, or what your favorite D&D class means for your past trauma. So that's definitely a thing.
Well, I'm getting into TikTok now, so I mean, and it's kind of frightening because I'm seeing all these people going through on TikTok where it's like, if you're older than 20, you shouldn't be on TikTok. If you're 30, you should delete your account. I'm like, all right, I'm 41 and I'm just starting here, so
Well, I mean, Mark Hamill just created an account. So like I think you're fine. And I don't know if you ever watched Supernatural, but the oh, I can't remember her name right now. She played Jody Mills, the sheriff in Supernatural. Um, but she's on there. She's doing great. Like
all right,
ignore the Gen Zers who think that it's all their platform. Their
exactly.
favorite content creators are, older than they realize.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I see. There's a lot of, and I think I mean, TikTok, it's run the way it's run through the algorithms. You tend to get filtered into certain sections. But talking
Absolutely.
about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're talking just a moment ago, I mentioned people that play video games and they go from start to finish or do side quests. So apart from the D&D stream, we're talking earlier, and you were mentioning that there is another very exciting stream coming up. So this is where the interview is shifting into the next phase, everyone. So it's not just a gaming stream, it's not just a writing stream, it is a video game development stream. Can you tell us the name of the game you're working on and a bit about like a bit about the game that you're creating?
Yep, absolutely. So, it's Cry of the Dead Dation. We are currently trying to get the demo for it finished, so that we can get funding to create the full game. But basically, Dacian is a story about the coming of age of a young man who does not really fit in with his adoptive family or the town that he's been raised in. And it is an interesting blend of kind of like Western villager, like islander life mixed with Native American culture. My co-writer for the series and the kind of project lead, Blaze, is half Native herself, and so she draws on a lot of her culture and her experiences. And we have a pretty heavy focus within the game on, really being in touch with yourself and your history and who you are, and navigating the world with acceptance, not just for yourself, but also for others, and being able to figure out how to shrug off people who aren't as accepting.
I really like the idea of involving the native and indigenous aspects of it and having that representation and having it's just a good message about moving forward and being thinking of the other then and we're taught a lot to just think of ourselves and get yourself ahead and the part that's missing is the more you think of others, the more you support others, the further ahead you get. The more you like if you step on others to get up, you're going to get ahead, but you're going to come crashing down and there's a lot of consequences that fall in with that.
Right.
So how did you come up with the concept of this, of the concept and the story for the game? You said you had a co-writer. How did this all come to be?
Yeah, so Blaze and I have been very good friends since 2009. She was also part of the other indie dev company that kind of dissolved. And when that happened, we and the musician kind of broke off on our own, and that was the start of JPS. So Blaze back in can't remember if she said when she was in like late. I don't remember if it was junior high or high school, but she started writing a novel called Cry of the Dead. And she got quite a bit of story written, but always felt like there was something missing with the story. And then talking, talking to people in the indie game community, decided, maybe I should make this a game. Um, and so we started true development on it together about 5 years ago, and had some issues with software not being robust enough, and things like that. But recently, like really with in the last couple of years, switched to RPG Maker VX Ace, which is a good bit more robust than what we had been trying to use. and that's been going super, super well. So we're really able to bring in all of the key factors from her novel, as well as some of the components that we really like to see personally in video games that we play.
That's really cool. It's nice to be able to grab something from the past and bring it up and turn it into something strong. So you said the game's been in development for about 5 years or so. Um, how has, because the elephant in the room that we've not mentioned and is ever present in all conversations, how has the pandemic impacted the development of the game at all? Has it expedited it? Has it slowed it down? What's been the impact?
Yeah, so when we both went into lockdown last year, um, we were like, you know what, neither of us is working, neither of us can work right now. And so we just really put our heads down and got to work on heavy focused development. So we were doing sometimes like 10, 12-hour days, which was insane. And we started having to enforce, a real sane schedule. Um, but we were working like pretty much every day for anywhere from 4 to 12 hours during the start of the pandemic for a couple of months. And so we went from getting, maybe one encounter done every few months to getting, we're about halfway done with the demo in just a couple of months. And then I had to move, and so there were, some delays again, and things opened back up. But it definitely um, gave us the push that we needed to really get back on the development train and figure out what we were doing. Um, and yeah, I honestly, if there can be a silver lining to the pandemic, I would say that giving us the space to figure out what we were doing is a really major and accurate one.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something my wife and I were actually just talking about yesterday. Is that there has been a lot of terribleness around the pandemic. There's been a lot of yeah, it's just been really tough and really hard on a lot of people. And everyone talks about how it's impacted different businesses and companies and things. However, there is a side of it where there's some companies are just doing very, very well. Like I noticed in my community alone, the companies that deliver soil cubes, people are home, so they're doing gardening. So there's been a lot more gardening. So there's a lot more people like selling soil and that kind of stuff. There's pod storage units that people are cleaning out their houses. They're changing things around. So there are different companies that are actually thriving more so and getting a boost from the pandemic while
Yep.
most are suffering. And there's also the opportunities that have come from it. Uh, like you were just saying for yourself and for myself, I got into the streaming. I got refocused on my writing. And for those that were able, it was an opportunity to pause and breathe, to pour all of their energy into their side gig, into whatever it is that they're working on, and really kind of take a quantum leap forward in what they were doing with this. So, as terrible as it all has been, if we look, there are some points, like you said, some silver lining that have
Absolutely.
come from it. But it is something that is still very hard, even with the silver linings.
Yep.
It's something very hard to deal with and very difficult mentally and all that. Excuse me, most definitely. So I know from writing, and for those of you that have been following the stream, The Lion of Archinomus, the science fiction story we're working on, there's a lot of plotting that we've been doing, and character design and development and world building and story to layouts and plotting, and that's all the stuff that factors into it. But writing and designing a video game, that's an entirely different beast. What what steps are involved in creating a game like this? Or what do you need to take into account when you're doing this?
Yeah, so there are a lot of challenges, a lot of things that you kind of have to be developing and keeping in mind, as parallel processes. Um, there are things that you might want to do to tell your story, and the technology just isn't there for it. So you either have to decide to compromise on those things and move on without them, or do like we did and wait for a more robust system so that you can tell the story the way that you want to. Um, and a lot of people will go into game design and build, these are the um, features that I want, and the battle system type that I want, and all of that. And then they'll layer a story on top of that. But the way that we prefer to work is to um, write our story, and then based on that, let that kind of inform what kind of features we need to be able to incorporate, and what kind of battle system is going to feel organic within the story. Um, and so we kind of do it in arcs. So we'll have, we know this is kind of the beginning. This is what really turns the story. So, in a game, it's not quite a climax, but the twist that puts the fire under the player's bums, and then this is how the story is going to ultimately conclude. And then we take each arc and build that arc as almost its own like episode. Um, so you can think of it kind of like as a mini series. This is this section, this is this, and this is that. And so we'll be writing that, and as we're working on the story and developing the dialogue, and thinking about how people can interact with it, we are, um, building our list of features, and we're doing play testing for, various just little innocuous bits of coding, and, um, like dialogue options. Can we make this branch the way that we want it to, or is it going to have to be a little bit more linear? Um, and so it very much is a side-by-side process. We focus on the story, but while we're telling the story we want to tell, we're making sure that we're going to be able to tell it, um, and kind of adjusting from there. So story is definitely the focus. Um, but even while we're, writing out the script, there's cutscenes and things like that, and we have to decide, okay, so is this going to be an animated cutscene? Is this a cutscene with the playable characters running around the map on, autopilot? Do they get to say anything, like make character dialogue choices within the cutscene, or how do we want this particular moment within the story to be told? And that drastically changes how we write the script for that scene. It's still the same story that we originally outlined, but the details are very fluid.
That makes sense. See, and that's the thing that listening to you talk about this all, that I kind of realize is that being a writer in novels and short stories and things, I enjoy making the reader work for me. I enjoy being able to hide behind certain things. On the current scene that I'm writing in the line of Archinomus, the spaceship comes down, lands in the ocean, and goes in under the cliffs. A door opens up, it goes up, and it goes into a landing bay. So there's a certain degree of explanation and description I have to do of how it's going in, what happens when it goes in, how the door opens, and what the landing bay kind of looks like. But I can hide behind a lot of that and just leave, because in storytelling for a novel, if you describe everything and take all the work away from the reader, it's not as enjoyed, it's not as popular. It's nice for the reader to be able to draw upon things that they've seen, that they've recognized, or they've played, to build in their mind what that landing space looks like, what the lighting
Yep.
systems look like, how all this stuff. You create a bit of, you leave some empty spaces for the reader to build stuff in. But when you're
Right.
designing a video game, you don't have any of that opportunity. You have to work on the design, the story, the battle systems, and it has to be there. It has to, you can't just say, and he used magic to get through this thing. You actually have to show how the magic was played out, what happened, how the steps were done to get through that. So there really is no room to hide and no room to let the player kind of build their own behind it. So it's a lot more of
Right.
a magnifying glass on your writing and how you've designed everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can do a little bit of letting the player do some of the work for you by giving those dialogue options and branching plot tendrils and things like that. But it really, you have to have a fully contained and fully explained story because the plot is definitely more defined just by having a visual medium attached to it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. But even if you do have the dialogue options and the different plot options, there has to be something built there for it. You have to have thought
right,
ahead that if they do this, it's going to be this. So there's aspects that are written that are never going to come to fruition
right.
from that one game through. The next playthrough may come, but you do really have to have all potentials planned out, everything thought out. The like, there's not a lot you can leave to the imagination. So that's a fascinating aspect of this. So with this game itself, is this before you is this what platform is this being developed for? Is it PC or
Yeah, so it is PC. It'll be available on Mac as well. We are looking into maybe porting it because there's some compatibility with importing from VXACE to RPG Maker MV, which would allow us to put it on like Switch and Android and iOS. But the primary focus is for Windows and Mac right now. Um, though having it on other platforms would be really awesome, really fun. But it also, different controls mean we would have to rethink some of our build. So
yeah?
computer is definitely the focus.
That makes sense, and that's actually one of the things I do on stream is speed run the game Superliminal, and it was originally designed for PC or computer, and then switched to other platforms. And that was one of the things they found difficult with it is adjusting the control systems for joystick. And so if you play the game and if you play it through with the developer commentary built into it, they explain in some sections the difficulties they had from porting from one system over to the other. So, with this game that you're working on, would you say the gameplay is more linear, like a start to finish, or is there more abstract and exploratory?
So this one is mostly linear. We do have, um, part of the branching options is that there are a few different endings that you can find yourself in. Um, And there's like the optimal ending, and then there's the worst ending, and then there are a couple that are a bit more realistic, I suppose, for how things would go in real life. And you reach those endings based on choices that you make throughout the game, not just in dialogue, but also what side quests you take, and uh, so those choices often seem kind of innocuous, but they can have really big impacts on the end gameplay. Um, but yeah, so this one is pretty linear. It's based on an island that does connect to the mainland, but you don't have much mainland exploration because your tribe and village are kind of going through a bit of a crisis.
That makes sense. So, is there any hints or clues that making one choice over another will lead to a different outcome? Or if you get to the end and you've received outcome C, is there a way that you can go back and know, okay, if I do this and this differently, then I'm going to get a different outcome? Or is it just kind of replay the game and keep trying until you get different outcomes?
There's definitely um, some of it you may have to kind of play around with to figure out why you've gotten, this over that. But other things, once you reach that ending, it will be hopefully pretty apparent why you got, that ending. The middle few options that are a bit more realistic, you may not know exactly what led to, you know, options B through D instead of A or E, but you at least know, okay, this, if you get option A, I mean, one, I did everything as best I could. If you get option D, then you're gonna know, okay, I didn't do enough of this, I didn't do enough of this, I definitely ignored that. But the getting the different kind of middle options may prove to be a little bit more, may require a bit more analysis than the most people typically do when playing a game.
That makes sense. So if there's different actions that have different outcomes, and I like the idea of consequences to your actions, that if you choose to just go off and choose to murder a villager, then that's not just something that's going to be unseen. It's actually
Right.
going to factor into how the game plays out for you. So it sounds like there's like a lot of replayability to this game. There's a lot of like you can go back into this world and immerse yourself and play it over and over again for a while. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not, it does have, like I said, several different potential outcomes, and because of that, you can certainly um, go through and try multiple things. There's also, once you beat the game the first time, there's a secondary area and series of quests that opens up for replayability on top of just the different endings and outcomes that you can unlock, in just a basic gameplay.
I have to say, I really do like the idea of having multiple endings because there's times when I've written stories or I'm writing stories and I'll have two or three different endings in mind, and it really is fascinating to have the ability to have those different endings out there and let people be able to find them. That's one concept, a teaser for everyone out there. Concept that I'm working on for a story I'm working on in the back of my mind is actually releasing a story, and I've got three different endings for it, and all three versions would be released, but they'd be released on different platforms and different methods, and it would be up to the reader to find the three different endings and three different versions of the story. Just something I'm playing around with to try to bring that kind of aspect into the writing world. I like to try to change things up a bit.
Be very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So I have to say this game does sound really interesting with how you've got it played out. Is this going to be a one-off game, or is it going to be part of a series?
No, the plan is for it to be part of a series. So at the end of the game, regardless of which ending you get, it is kind of open-ended. You know that there's more to discover in the world, and there's some characters that are going to be introduced kind of in the last couple of scenes that really do tell you, okay, there's a lot going on in the rest of the world, and so we will be exploring those storylines and expanding the game into a full series, so long as this one does well, because we do have story for it.
So,
And those the sequels will be um, a bit more open world, less linear, but will probably look a lot the same.
I'm just reposting your links. Hey, LJ is rating with three people. Just one moment to notice.
Hello, Raiders.
Yes, hello Raiders. Thank you very much for the raid, LJ. I hope your stream went well. Hello, Composer. And also have to say as well, thank you to follow earlier, Burkworm, Bookworm, Lex for the follow as well. Yes, I apologize, chat. That sound would have been deafening. Let me change my alert box. I just realized I turned up the volume for my desktop audio and did not change the sound alert.
Ah,
So that was your wake up call, everyone. For anyone who was falling asleep during this interview, that was your moment to wake up. I apologize for that. I'm still figuring things out. See, there you go, Mama B. I just woke you up. So I like the idea that this is a more of an open world, and that it is going to be a little bit different. I think that is something that is different. It, it continues interest as you play along. Oh no, Bailey, I apologize. So one of the things I find difficult or we've discussed on stream before, is the concept of writing a trilogy. Having the first book is very exciting, and people are getting into it and learning about everything. People are excited for the last book because it is covers what like it wraps everything up and it ends everything nicely for the book. But it's that in between book that the second book, that is difficult to figure out and to make sure that it's not destroying the story or over explaining or creating too many branches that you're going to have to tie up at the end. Would you say that it's the same thing for doing a series of video games? There's like the middle child is the more difficult to work with, or is it pretty clear cut? You know what it's going to be.
um, games can be games are a weird creature in that regard. Because this is not my only series that I'm working on. We are we've got another one that is also going to be a series that we've kind of danced around with where in the timeline we're going to put the first book. And so it's less about keeping interest throughout the series and more about um, making sure that each game can be its own kind of self-contained story while tying to the others. Because with a game, there's a lot more interactivity, and so um, the lack of hype that you can encounter with, the middle book of a trilogy is less of a concern. Um, but one thing that we are doing with this one in particular to kind of mitigate that, oh, well, it's the same story and it's not ending yet kind of ambivalence or apathy that you can sometimes encounter is each game is going to have a focus on a new area of the world. So new culture, new characters, but uh, the story and the drive are going to be consistent throughout. So we'll see how it goes. Uh, we've got a lot of plans for it, um, but we're just kind of focusing on how this one is going to go and getting it into people's hands before we can really sink our teeth into the next one.
And I guess the feedback and the pickup of this one is probably going to dictate a little bit of the next one as well. If you
Absolutely.
learn new things from it or things to adjust and change. So I have to
Uh,
ask if I know for myself, I don't mind streaming, writing a novel on stream because, well, I've got some very loyal viewers that will come through and check out almost every single stream I do, and I'm greatly appreciative for that. I know there's a lot of people that aren't able to pop in on every single stream. So as I'm writing a novel, they're going to come in and they're going to see chunks, and they're going to miss chunks. The whole story is not going to be given away. But we've discussed writing and developing a game is different from writing and developing a novel or a story. So why stream the game development? Are you not afraid of giving away your secrets? Are you not afraid of uh, just giving away the game?
Yeah, so that's something that we've discussed off and on for the last 2 years actually, but especially last year when we were in hyper focus mode because of the pandemic, and that's when I had, just started streaming. I wasn't even affiliated yet. And so, we had discussed, do we want to try streaming this? Like, and there are definitely bits of development that we're not going to be able to do on stream. The more story intensive things, working on scripts, going over, art and stuff like that, we're not going to be able to do terribly much of that on stream just because, we don't want to give away too many spoilers. But the nitty-gritty side of things where we're doing a whole bunch of play tests and figuring out like what we're doing with um, getting this effect to work in battle. Um, we're not discussing a ton of the strategy involved in beating some of these things. It's very coding heavy, and most of what people are going to be enjoying is just our banter back and forth as we figure things out. Um, but we we recorded a lot of our old sessions, partially just so that we could go back if there was a major bug or glitch and figure out like maybe where we went wrong. But in watching some of that back, we realized that we're not giving away terribly many secrets as we do that, even with no one actually watching. So it's not going to be a huge concern, um, on stream, so long as we're both conscious about what questions we do and don't answer from the audience.
And it makes sense too if it's more focused on coding and hyper focused on one aspect of trying to just
Hmm.
to work out one aspect of the story. So being a streamer, being a writer, being all this stuff, I'm always very conscious and very concerned about the viewer, the reader, the audience. Apart from just the banter that people are going to be seeing and some of the coding and the work that you're putting into it, Is there room for audience participation? Is the audience, again, is like my question for the D&D, is it just the audience sitting there asking random questions and watching everything play out, or is there room for them for input and participation? How is it going to work for the audience?
Yeah, so th this is something that we're still kind of building and discussing, but we do plan on having bits for audience feedback, like especially on some of our puzzles that we're developing to get through the thing, because our brains work very, very similarly. It's one reason that we're a good team and we translate each other to the rest of the world all the time. And so, one of our concerns is, okay, we may understand and love this puzzle, but is anyone else going to? And so, being able to build it and then, like ask chat to say, okay, do this next, and just see how well chat kind of picks up what we're doing. And obviously, they'll have a little bit of an edge because they've seen us build it, but just making sure that, like, we're getting feedback that, yeah, this puzzle seems doable, or hey, that room seems fun, and taking suggestions like. I don't know if you've ever heard of the rubber duck for programmers.
Yeah,
Um, but for anyone who hasn't, it's essentially, this idea of if you're really struggling getting something to work, you get, a rubber duck, or you grab your cat, or, whatever, and you explain, starting in the most basic details, what you're doing and how it's supposed to work and what you've done so far will sometimes make your brain go, oh, yeah, that thing that I was missing, that super simple thing, this is it. Um, and so, chat is going to kind of be our rubber ducks, and they may have suggestions that, even though they don't really know what they're doing or they don't fully understand what we're doing, sometimes having a completely outside perspective looking in and going, well, have you ever tried adding, uh, you know, a feather to this situation? And you're like, a feather? And then you do it and you're like, oh, that actually really improved it. Okay, yeah, perfect.
there we go.
So we do want that kind of thing. We also are, trying to figure out how to incorporate, the possibility for donations and subscriptions, and even maybe channel point redemptions, to engage with the development, and there's some opportunity for like naming NPCs and things like that. So we're definitely still developing how we want stream interactivity to go, but we want to do something with the game development like we have been able to figure out for JPEG for sure.
That's great. And yeah, that's something that I love. I've got a little octopus and Batman back here that, as a writer, same thing. Sometimes just verbalizing the issue, not having it rattle around your head in the same pattern, actually speaking it out. And I like the idea of saying it at a baser level, but just verbalizing it can get the
Yep,
wheels moving again, and you have rubber ducks that can talk or type at least into the chat.
exactly.
And that's the thing that I really like about streaming and writing while I'm streaming is I've got feedback from people that have no concept about science fiction writing that will throw in ideas and say, what about this? And sometimes they're really goofy. And oftentimes, if it's really goofy, I like to try to find a way to work it in, just as a gag or as something within the story. But then you also get people that kind of hold your feet to the fire because they know they're experts in whatever you're working on, and they can actually say, like, you've got this wrong, or have you thought of this, or why didn't you do it like this when you should have done it like this? So I find that can be very good, and you're not just verbalizing to a rubber duck. You actually do have something that can communicate back with you, which is fantastic.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So if you build up the audience, you've got a great routine going through, the game is going along well, everything is tucking along nicely. Uh, for writing, I've got beta readers, I've got test readers, I've got things like that. Obviously, you need the same thing for doing a game. So what about beta testing? Are you going to farm out beta testing to a specific group you've already got planned, or will there be a chance for audience members from your chat to become beta testers? And if so, the burning question on everyone's mind is, what do they need to do to become a beta tester?
Right, right. So absolutely, we're going to be inviting audience members to be beta testers, especially as we get closer to, completion of the demo, um, and eventually the end game itself. We do have some people who have already supported us in various ways who are going to be doing beta testing, but we definitely want people who have been supporting us throughout to be part of it. And so that's part of what we've discussed about, bits and subs and channel points. Like, we definitely want a few slots to be open through like channel point redemptions, just showing, hey, I may not have money, but I've been here, I've been supporting you, and I'd really like to support you in this extra way. And so, you can do a channel point redemption showing I've put in, the time watching and engaging. Um, but we're also talking about, if you do this much of financial support, then you'll be able to, do beta testing and such as well, because we also, need to pay artists and things like that. Um, as it is all going to be custom art, and so yeah, we're still figuring out the logistics of that, but being engaged in stream, being engaged on the Discord, definitely are, the prime ways to get in there, because if we don't know your name, we're not gonna trust you to, go run off with our game and come back and not have given it to someone else, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got to figure out, how many spots there are gonna be, and how to divvy out those spots as well. So
Yeah, and I really like the idea of having the channel points. That's for people that follow me. They know I've got a channel point system, and one of them is I think like 250,000 channel points, which means you'd have to be watching my stream for like 4 or 5 months. And the reason for that being is that reward is becoming a character in one of my novels, or me writing a story specifically for you. So if I'm going to
yeah,
take the time to sit down and write a story about or for you specifically, I need to know that there's been a commitment on the other side. That you know who I
absolutely.
am, you know how I write, you're interested in what I've got and what I'm doing. So I like the idea of working with it with that way. Well, I'm definitely gonna be following. I'm definitely gonna be interested in possibly beta testing. I love trying new games. And once more, I'm gonna put your links out here for anyone who is interested, anyone that's watching this and is interested in learning more about some of the stuff that we've been talking about today. Uh, so we are getting close to the end of the interview. There is something that I do like to do, and I like to throw out random questions at people. Nothing that's going to be too wild or over the top, but just something that's kind of topical and kind of fits. So I've got two questions for you tonight. Just why not? We've talked about two topics, so let's torture you on two sides. But they both go to the same thing. So I'm going to ask you both questions. So they are: which Dungeons and Dragons character type would be the best to lead the United Nations? And on the other side of that coin, which D&D enemy type would be the worst to lead the United Nations?
Oh gosh. Okay, so which player
Which
type would be the best and which enemy type would be the worst?
exactly,
Okay. So best player type,
and why?
let's see. Um, I'm gonna have to go with a monk on that one. They tend to have a pretty solid like compass, so far as this is why I do things, this is why people should do things. And they're also, really good at getting stuff done. And the more they do it, the more just like crazy good and powerful they become. So, they're going to be heavy hitters, but um, they also are thinkers, so it's not like throwing a fighter or a barbarian in just because they're heavy hitters. It's, that you have that nice balance. Um, and so yeah, they would be pretty good. Gosh, worst enemy type. Um, I'm gonna go with I think an illithid because they're just gonna like they're gonna destroy just the minds of everyone that they're trying to govern, or take them over entirely, and that's kind of like the dream of any corrupt world leader is to be able to do that. So I feel like one, that is definitely the kind of uh the kind of enemy that would go for that, and two, um they would they'd be just an absolute nightmare.
Well, there we have it. So everyone out there that's paying attention, next time a monk runs for United Nations, vote for them. Next time an illithid runs for United Nations, do everything you can to stop them from getting into power. So I gotta say thank you very much, Xander, for joining us tonight. I've been thrilled to learn about your upcoming projects, your game, your D&D. It's actually starting to spike a new interest into the like into Dungeons and Dragons for me. Like I said, it's been a very long time since I played it, since I've had anything to do with it. So I'm very excited to learn about this stuff. And I said I was going to try to join in your next game. I realized that's the night of my next board meeting, so I might have to just pop in for a little bit and then pop out. But I am very interested in learning all this stuff. So again, can you remind us when the next D&D stream is?
Yes, so the next D&D stream is Wednesday, June 2nd from 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I've just sent that to the chat as well.
Excellent.
Um, so yeah, we're very excited. It is a new time slot. So we'll be interested to see how it works out. Um, but hopefully it goes well for us. Um, and yeah, we're very excited. It's gonna be interesting. We're doing super high level characters, and all we know about this next session is that it needs to be super combat ready. And yeah, we do need two more players. So if anyone wants to join in, this session, I think we do want people who have experience just because it is a high level um, session. Um, Whereas like the others are lower level, so there's less for people to have to learn and keep track of. But yeah, if you want to join in, definitely let us know. And I have just sent you a link to my Discord. So if you want to send that to the chat, I realized that it wasn't in the list of things there, but yeah, the Discord is the way that you join in.
I will try to send that into the chat after. I'm just looking. I think no, that is there. Yeah. So I'll toss it into the chat after, just so I'm not.
Some
Or can I do that here?
you should be
There
able
we
to
go. I do have it
just
here.
okay,
Copy.
perfect.
We're gonna put that in here. So there's the link to the Discord for Jaded Phoenix for everyone that's interested. Jaded Phoenix Studios. So I have to say, this has been fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me and agreeing to do this interview. It's just as I thought it would be. It's been great to have writing, but from different perspectives and doing different things. So thank you very much for being a part of the Writers Chat interview series. And we'll definitely have to have you on again if you're interested after the game gets further developed and see a little bit
Yeah,
more about how things are going with that.
absolutely. Yeah, I would love to do this again once we have a little bit more to talk about, kind of meat and potatoes wise, for sure.
Sounds good.
Had
Well,
a great time.
thank you. We'll definitely stay in touch on this. So I'm going to end the interview here. Thank you to the audience for joining us for the interview. The stream is still going to go on for a little bit. We'll just do some general chat and planning for future streams and things like that, and talking about stuff. But again, thank you very much, Xander. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you for your time. It's been a longer interview, but it's been fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. And I will look forward to your future streams and hope to see you in mine.
Definitely. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you
Thanks.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.